Hi guys, it's me, ChazzaHD, and welcome to this preview for this weekend's 2022 Spanish Grand Prix. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Of course, I've not done any content on the channel for, 10 days? So, yeah, it feels like it's been a massive break, to be honest. And obviously Miami was a very busy weekend, certainly for me, covering all of the stuff that happened in that particular weekend. But thankfully, we have already arrived to the next Grand Prix. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Hopefully, no matter what time it is in your part of the world, no matter what part of the world you're from, hopefully you're having as good of a day as you could possibly be having. Obviously, if you've, watched the start of the stream there, you see I have now a starting soon screen, I guess you could say, with a countdown. If you can, then, make sure to give me feedback as to whether, you would like that to continue. I'm just kind of testing it out to see, whether it's a better thing. Obviously, for people then to join the stream, then be able to catch the very start of the stream instead of wondering, when did I start, type of thing. And obviously, for people watching back, it'll be better for them. But obviously, if you guys, like it better the old way, then I'd go back to the old way. But we'll see what you guys say if you do have anything to say about that. But yeah, tonight, Spanish Grand Prix preview. Also, I will be getting into some little bits of news. Most of it is going to be really surrounding this Grand Prix. A lot of news about upgrades, I have to tell you, when it comes to the cars and the teams for this weekend. And we'll get into that very, very soon. Also, I am going to do another topic after we get into what I think is going to happen most likely this weekend in Spain. We're going to get into another topic, which is going to be to do really with the last Grand Prix in Miami. And I will also clip that part of the stream and upload it as a separate video, which will come out probably tomorrow lunchtime, my time, of course, UK time, for anyone who is unable to watch that part of the stream. So yeah, plenty coming your way this evening here on the channel. But before we get into the teams and get into how I think they're going to do, let me first get into the championship standings coming into this Grand Prix. So here are the drivers' championship standings. Here is the top 10. Charles Leclerc leading, coming into this race by 19 points. Max Verstappen is in second on 85 points. Perez third, and then Russell not that far behind in fourth place. Shows you how good of a season he's had despite the Mercedes car being nowhere near the pace of the Red Bull or Ferrari, and he's still ahead of Carlos Sainz, who is in fifth, and then Lewis Hamilton, with the last Grand Prix, climbed up to sixth in the championship. Lando Norris in seventh, Bottas eighth, Esteban Ocon ninth. Pretty tight, I have to say, between Hamilton and Ocon for those positions. Good to see it being so close. And then Kevin Magnussen is still in 10th place after, of course, having such a good result earlier in the season in Bahrain, which really is helping him be in that position. And then here is the Constructors' Championship standings. Ferrari lead by, how many points is that? 6 points over Red Bull. And then Mercedes are third, quite clearly behind Ferrari and Red Bull. And then quite clearly ahead of McLaren, who are in fourth place. And then in fifth place, you have Alfa Romeo, 15 points behind McLaren on 31 points. And then Alpine just behind in sixth. 10 points behind are AlphaTauri in seventh. Haas a point behind in eighth. And then Aston Martin ninth. And Williams in 10th. Looks as though those two teams are in close combat at the moment in the championship. But as we'll get into later, with certain upgrades being brought to this Grand Prix, that might not be the case for very much longer. Now, let's just get straight into it. And we'll start, of course, with the Scuderia Ferrari team, who come into this Grand Prix definitely needing to win, because Red Bull clearly have the momentum on their side. In Miami, even though they got the front row, it was always going to be a 50-50 as to whether they won because Red Bull had the quicker car that weekend. The only reason they got pole position is because Max Verstappen made a mistake on his final attempt in qualifying. And then even in the race, they got a bit lucky with their result that Sergio Perez, had an issue during the race, which even though he still finished, cost him quite a bit of lap time after he had a sensor problem with his power unit. Because if he didn't have that issue, Perez could have finished, or probably would have finished in third, maybe even higher, because Red Bull definitely had the legs on Ferrari in Miami. And of course, it was the same case at Imola. So Ferrari have got to stop Red Bull having this momentum, because if there's any team in this fight that is more so unstoppable with momentum, it's going to be Red Bull, because Red Bull are the better team. They have the better personnel, and this Red Bull team, in terms of the personnel they have, are more experienced in being in a championship fight and winning, of course, world championships than Ferrari are with the personnel they have. So Red Bull, at the moment, their confidence is sky high. Obviously, the reliability isn't quite 100% there, with obviously what the thing that Perez had in the race in Miami, and then Verstappen had some issues on the Friday, thankfully for him, on the Friday. But if Ferrari want to win the championship, they can't afford Red Bull to go, long stretches of having success over them. That's a big reason why Red Bull won the championship in 2021 with Max Verstappen in the driver's side, because Verstappen was able to go on a few race run where he finished ahead of Lewis Hamilton. What was it? I think last year it was Monaco, and then Baku, neither of them scored points, but Verstappen was going to win that race. And then, of course, after that, he won 3 in a row in France, and then the 2 races in Austria. But then I think after that, Verstappen had a pretty good run over Lewis Hamilton, I think just after the summer break, where there was only one race out of the first 6 or 7 after the summer break where Hamilton actually scored more points than Max Verstappen. And like I said, it was a big reason why Verstappen was able to win the championship and able to build the lead to the point that Hamilton had to produce all-time great form to cut it down to almost nothing before that final race. And of course, what happened in the final race will go down in infamy. But yeah, like I said, Ferrari, they cannot allow them to do that, to get into that type of form. And as well, I don't think Ferrari are as capable, if they allow Red Bull to keep outscoring them, getting wins. I don't think Ferrari are as capable as a team like Mercedes of pulling it back in their favour. I just don't think they are. Thankfully, though, it does look as though Ferrari, with upgrades they are bringing this weekend, might start to, from their point of view, thankfully, it looks as though they might start to swing it back in their favour for at least the next couple races. Of course, this circuit we're racing at, the Circuit De Catalunya, it is a Ferrari track. The first sector is going to be pretty much equal between the two teams because how short it is. If you were to favour one team over the other, though, you'd probably have to say Red Bull, because of how quick the Red Bull car is in a straight line. But in the second and third sector at Barcelona, that Ferrari car is going to be stronger than the Red Bull. I mean, we saw it in Miami in that first sector, which was the sector most dominated by corners, that the Ferrari was clearly faster in that sector by, 2 or 3 tenths of a second. And I expect Ferrari to be very quick in those sectors. But yeah, when it comes to upgrades, Ferrari have brought... We don't know exactly all of the upgrades yet because they haven't officially really showed their upgrades. They're going to show them tomorrow in practice when other teams have already kind of showed them. And obviously bolted them onto the car ready for tomorrow. And like I said, they've already kind of showed their new upgrades and upgraded specs of cars. But we believe it's really the main ones, a new floor, which, if it works, I'm sure it will make Ferrari very, very strong in the corners. And then also the new updated power unit, which Ferrari I mean, reports have come out that the Ferrari power unit is actually stronger than the Honda power unit, and that it's actually the case that Red Bull, they've designed their car in such a way that it is so incredibly quick down the straights. It's not actually down to the power unit. So I was incorrect in thinking that. It's actually down to just how much less drag they're running compared to, say, Ferrari and especially Mercedes. But yeah, that upgraded power unit, if it can, eke themselves, get themselves a bit further, or a bit closer rather, to Red Bull in straight line speed to combat how quick the Red Bulls are on the straights, then I have no doubt Ferrari will be very, very strong for this Grand Prix. To be honest, even if Ferrari didn't bring an upgrade for this weekend, I still think they would be pretty strong, because like I said, the track layout, I just think, really does suit their car to a T. After that first sector, it's going to be very hard, if you are Max Verstappen and Red Bull, really, to compete with Leclerc and hopefully Carlos Sainz. Of course, it is Carlos Sainz's home race. We hope that he puts in a good performance. Last year didn't really do so. He finished, was it 7th place, I think, last year, and his teammate was up in 4th, so wasn't great, but we have seen in the past, before he obviously came to the Ferrari team, we have seen in the past Carlos put in some very good performances, even finishing in the top 6 of a Grand Prix in a Toro Rosso around this circuit. So we know he can, put in a good performance and get a great result. Hopefully for the team, he does that this weekend. But let me just quickly move on to this, because I need to display that it is Ferrari, or the last time Ferrari won in Spain was in 2013 with Fernando Alonso. And Ferrari have won the Spanish Grand Prix that has taken place here in Catalonia 8 times. Between 2001 and 2008, Ferrari completely dominated this race. They won it in, was it 01, 02, 03, 04, and then again in 07 and 08. And like I said, Alonso won it in 2013. And it is a surprise that they've gone that long without winning around this track, because they had a great chance in 2017 and were leading the race for, I think, the majority of it. 2018 also had a decent chance that year. And then really, the other years after that, you'd have to say no. And maybe 2016 as well. They probably could have, maybe should have won that race as well. So Ferrari have had chances. And it is, like I said, it is a bit of a surprise. Even though Ferrari, yes, have had a almost 15-year title drought, it is a bit of a surprise that they've gone almost 10 years without winning around this circuit. Considering how much, like I said, they used to dominate this circuit in the past with not just not just race wins, but podiums as well. Just want to quickly though get on to a different subject, because there was some other news to do with Ferrari. Let me just try and get this up and then I'll display it on screen for you guys. But yeah, there was some other news to do with Ferrari, and it seems as though they're already, from a political standpoint, they're already starting to turn up the heat, possibly, on the Red Bull team. Let me just try and find it on Twitter, then I'll display it on the screen. Yep, here we go. So let me just show it quickly. And there you go. I'll just quickly adjust it so you guys can see. My mouse isn't working great tonight for some reason. And hold on. Right. Here we go. So, is that displaying correctly? Yes, it is. So, the Ferrari team, it's been reported, will shortly present a dossier with the expenses of each team at the start of the season to the FIA. When they say the start of the season, I think they mean from the start of the season, possibly. Basically, I think Ferrari are concerned, and if we go up, you can kind of see this with Binotto's quote and comments here. I think Ferrari are concerned. Certainly Red Bull might actually be spending a bit too much, given that we have a budget cap for each team. And of course, when it comes to, wind tunnel development time and all of that, it's regulated based on where you finished in the championship the previous year. So if you finish towards the back, you get more time and all of that. And I think Ferrari are concerned with that. And Binotto said, if there is a concern, it's how much Red Bull are developing considering the budget cap. That's certainly a concern we've got, but more than a concern, as I said, maybe it's a hope, but because at some stage they'll need to stop. And then let's see if there's any more quotes in the thread quickly. Then he says, we do not have the money to spend for upgrades at each single race. I think it's as simple as that, not because of inability, but because of the budget cap. So we need somehow to try focus development on when we believe it's the right moment and the right spending. Now, with this, them raising this to the FIA, it is definitely a sign of them already starting to play that game. But it is, I think, a sign of them getting petty already. And possibly, you could argue, already coming up with excuses for if they don't win the championship. I have to say, the biggest takeaway I had from this was that, this is the 6th race, this weekend. This is the 6th race of the season. For every team, it's way too early to be talking about, are certain teams going over the budget cap or are they close? Like I said, it's race 6. If this was nearer to the summer break, the end of the summer break, or not the end of the summer break, the end of the first half of the season, right before the summer break, or it was around, the Italian Grand Prix, which is in early September, and Red Bull was still, or were bringing upgrades to the car, quite big upgrades to the car, then I could understand the concern. But like I said, it's race 6. They're not going to be, no team is going to be anywhere near the limit, I don't think, as of yet. I just don't think that's going to be the case. So I don't understand why Binotto is... unless he's doing this purely to try and wind Red Bull up, I don't really understand why he's doing this now. Again, I could understand if he does this at a later point because like I said, if Red Bull are still developing their car by the Italian Grand Prix at Monza in early September, then yeah, you could be like, oh, I don't know, they don't seem like they're really paying much attention to that cost cap. But like I said, we're barely halfway through. We're not even halfway through the season. We're about, a quarter of the way through the season? It's just way, way too early. And also, a second thing is, Ferrari, we've already talked about this. Ferrari have not brought any upgrades to their car, really, since the Bahrain test. It's been the same car since Bahrain up until the Miami Grand Prix. That's how confident they were in what they had. And you have to say, they're leading both championships, so you can't really say that they got it massively wrong. And now, at this Grand Prix, they're bringing their first proper upgrade to the Formula 1 season. If we look at Red Bull, though, Red Bull have not brought that many upgrades. Red Bull brought an upgrade to the final day of testing, and then I think they may have brought another something to the first race, but it was like a small upgrade. It was just to add on top of what they brought to the test the week before. But if we look since the first race, the only upgrades Red Bull have really brought was at Imola, which was a small one. But the car improvement, I guess you could say, has not come from upgrades since the first race, which was in, the 18th of March or something. The main improvement for the Red Bull car has come from them shedding the weight of the car, because the Red Bull car weighed quite a bit more than the Ferrari car did at the start of the season. That was a big reason why Red Bull were definitely on the back foot compared to Ferrari in the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. But once we got to Imola, they shed, I think, 4 kilograms, and then they shed I think a couple more for Miami, and they're continuing to do so for this Grand Prix as well. Ferrari also for this Grand Prix, I think shedding like 3/4 of a kilo for this race. But like I said, Red Bull's upgrades haven't really been like new car parts. They've been more so shedding weight off the car by, I think, fiddling around with the paint job and all of that. So it's not been, it's not like Red Bull have brought a massive upgrade at Imola that you would normally bring to, say, this Grand Prix, and then they're bringing another big upgrade here. Then maybe you could be like, oh, maybe Red Bull maybe aren't paying much attention to it. I could maybe understand slight concern there, but Red Bull have not upgraded their car as much as people think. Again, most of their car improvement has been just shedding weight off the car. The teams that have really brought the most upgrades, I would say, are probably Mercedes have brought probably one of the most upgrades in terms of car parts this season. McLaren are up there. Alfa Romeo, I think, as well. Maybe Aston Martin. But if you look at Ferrari and Red Bull, and I think rightfully so, have not really upgraded their car massively since the first race in Bahrain, because they knew, both of them, they had the two best cars on the grid, and there was no one realistically who from the teams below them was going to challenge them. So that's why they've not really pushed on with upgrades. But after this race, we'll see how it goes for them. But I'll just quickly click off of that. But yeah, Ferrari complaining about that. We'll see if that plays a factor later in the season, but I don't think it's going to necessarily at the moment. But my expectation is that Ferrari will win this Grand Prix, because like I said, I just think the car is going to be too strong in the middle and final sector. And I expect Charles Leclerc to win the race this weekend. If he doesn't win the race this weekend, considering the car they should have around this track, it'll be a big loss for him. It really, really will. And also, when you consider that next weekend it's the Monaco Grand Prix, of course, it's home race, and a race that I think Ferrari should win as well there, because I think they'll also probably do pretty well around there, and definitely have a car that handles very well the Monaco streets. He needs, confidence going into that Grand Prix. Especially after crashing Niki Lauda's, 1974 Ferrari car around the streets of Monaco. I think was it last weekend. Wasn't his fault though. It was a brake failure at the was it the Rascasse? I think it was. So like I said, it wasn't his fault. But yeah, in terms of his world championship, a win this weekend is an absolute must, because at least with the last race in Miami, you can look at it and say, well, Red Bull were always going to be favourites there, and they did have the better car. But this weekend, I don't think that excuse can be there, because I think Ferrari should be winning this weekend. And for Carlos Sainz, Sainz has to be, at the very least, on the podium. He has got to be somewhat challenging Sainz or Verstappen. Leclerc or Verstappen, sorry. He has to be. Home race, we know he's done well here in the past. He has to get his season going. He absolutely has to at this current moment. And yeah, we'll move on now to the Red Bull team. And yeah, Red Bull, they've got the momentum behind them. They've cut the championship lead down to, 19 points of Max Verstappen in the driver's side, and then only 6 points on the constructor's side. So yeah, Red Bull right back in it, and thankfully for them, they haven't suffered any big reliability trouble in the last two races, certainly on the side of Max Verstappen, because if they did, then things would be very, very comfortable for the Ferrari team. It really, really would. But at the moment, because Red Bull have, kept reliable enough, and Verstappen has won those two races now, it's really back on again, and Red Bull are really back into the championship fight. When after Australia, it looked as though he was clinging on already after race 3 of the season, now a 22 race season, as I'll get into in a moment with the news, as the Russian Grand Prix isn't going to have a replacement, according to Liberty Media. But yeah, going back to Red Bull, like I said, I think Ferrari will have the stronger car this weekend. Red Bull just need to maximise what they have and hope that either Verstappen puts in a amazing performance and can somehow win the race, or, just capitalise off of any mistakes that come from the Ferrari team. But they're definitely the underdogs this weekend. Even coming out of the Miami Grand Prix, I think Christian Horner was even saying Ferrari will be the better team in Spain because their car just suits that track so well. And we saw in testing, I know, of course, testing cars are in a lot of more of a different state, but the Ferrari car around Catalonia, or the Catalunya track, looked so good in that first pre-season test. So, yeah, just maximise, no pun intended, maximise what they've got and, see what happens. But if Max, if he does finish second in the Spanish Grand Prix, then that's not necessarily a bad result. I mean, from Ferrari's side of things, it would be a very, very good sign if they could win the next 2 races, this weekend and next weekend in Monaco, where they will have, I think, the favourites tag, and they will have probably the quickest car. But if they don't quite live up to that, then, a win in one of the next 2 races for Verstappen and then a second place in the other would be absolutely good enough. Because coming up after these 2 races in Spain and Monaco, we have tracks that Red Bull are going to have a lot of fun around. Baku, Montreal, Austria, Silverstone. Red Bull are going to go very, very well there. So they just need to make sure they do the best they can and keep Ferrari on their toes and hope that Ferrari get things wrong, kind of like they did in Imola. Now, we'll quickly move on to this. Red Bull, their last win at the Spanish Grand Prix was in 2016 with Max Verstappen. Of course, that was Verstappen's first Grand Prix for Red Bull in 2016 when he was 18 years old, was it? In May of 2016. And Red Bull have won the Spanish Grand Prix 3 times. Even though they've not been in the sport that long, they've only been in the sport, 17 years, you would have honestly expected them to have won the Grand Prix here in Spain more, considering they've been a top team really since 2009. They won it, 2010, 2011, and then, of course, in 2016. There were other years where they could have won, but they did not. But last year, certainly, they were very, very close to winning, and Verstappen did an amazing job to put up such a strong fight and to make Mercedes at the time work for it and get the victory. If Verstappen can put in that type of performance this weekend, then he gives himself a very good chance of a very good result going into the next few races in his championship fight with his new main rival in Formula 1, of course, Charles Leclerc. Now let's go on to the Mercedes team, and this weekend is a massive weekend for the Mercedes team. Of course, they did bring upgrades to, I think, Imola, and they did bring an upgrade to the Miami Grand Prix, but they were not the type of upgrades that were really going to turn this car from midfield mediocrity into, a front-running team. This weekend, we will find out whether Mercedes, I think, are going to have a car at any point this season that is going to be able to fight for victories. If this upgrade doesn't work or doesn't have the effect of, closing that gap down dramatically, and of course we do have to factor in again that Ferrari and Red Bull have brought their respective upgrades to their cars, so it's not going to be, it's not like Mercedes are definitely going to close the gap somewhat. because Ferrari and Red Bull might pull out the gap with the upgrades they have. But if Mercedes cannot, finally get this car working this weekend around a track where they've historically been so great around since 2014, if they cannot, with this upgrade, produce a performance and a type of pace that is clearly much, much quicker than we've seen this season, then this season is pretty much over in terms of will Mercedes get back to being a front-running team. This weekend is so, so critical because, like I said, if it doesn't quite work this weekend, then in Monaco there'll be... Maybe because of the short layout there, they won't be too bad, but it won't be as great for them as maybe it should be. And then, of course, the races after that, or the tracks after that, they play into some parts of the Mercedes car that, or they'll show up the weaknesses of this Mercedes car quite a bit more so than these next two tracks. So this is just an absolutely massive weekend for this team. And honestly, I know, of course, they've dominated Formula 1 for so long, and this is the first time in so long that we've got different teams fighting at the front, that Mercedes aren't one of them. I get that, but for the good of Formula 1, I hope this upgrade does work, because we need, Hamilton and Russell and the Mercedes team, we need them up there. We absolutely do. The Formula 1 season so far hasn't been amazing, hasn't been... I wouldn't say great, honestly, so far this season, but you can guarantee, even if it had been a great start to the season in terms of excitement, especially at the front there with Leclerc, Verstappen, Sainz, Perez, it would be way more exciting with Hamilton and Russell in the mix. Two insanely quick drivers, and of course Lewis Hamilton, 7 times world champion. So I really do hope that this weekend they close that gap massively and they really start to showcase the potential that we've heard a lot about in the last few weeks or so. Hopefully we get to see that this weekend. I just wanted to, if I can, let me just try and get it up on Twitter, because I actually was able to find a picture of the Mercedes, the main upgrade, which is to the floor. Let me get that up now, and here it is. And hopefully it'll come up in good picture. Yep, this is from Automotor and Sport. And the top picture is the floor from before the Spanish Grand Prix, as it says there in the tweet. And then the picture below is the new one. You can tell it's a new one because the e-performance sticker is in a different position to the one above. So that is your new Mercedes floor, and hopefully it does work for them. That has been really the floor area that has been the main problem, I think, for them. Of course, when it comes to straight line speed, that is down to, slightly, I'd say, the porpoising, but it has been down to the lack of power from the Mercedes power unit that we have seen this season, which it definitely needs to be improved upon. But even without that, that power that they need, you would expect a team like Mercedes then to make up most of it in the corners. But in the corners, they've been still pretty poor, and certainly compared to Ferrari and Red Bull, when it comes to the grip coming from the floor, they haven't been anywhere near. Certainly Red Bull in terms of how comfortable the car is to drive, and with the Ferrari car, it also does porpoise, up and down, but the Ferrari seems to be able to not lose grip, when they stop porpoising and then enter a corner. When the Mercedes car previously, of course we'll see what happens with their car this weekend, and the Mercedes car previously, would porpoise down the straight, and then when it entered a corner, it would just be a handful. We'll see if that continues again this weekend, but if that floor does work and it gains them a load of time, the Mercedes are back in the fight. I think they'll definitely continue to close the gap during this season. I think probably if it does work, this upgrade, and I'm sure they'll also have a couple other upgrades to the car. If it does work, then what I expect to see, because Mercedes won't really have that much wiggle room in terms of the budget cap, what they'll probably do, if it does work, is bring another big upgrade. Maybe around Silverstone, but, maybe at the latest when we come to Spa, when the season gets going again after the summer break. Yeah, like I said previously, I really hope it works for them, because we do need them back up the front in Formula 1. As much as people may hate them, they have drivers that we absolutely need to see fighting against those front guys. Now, let's go on to the McLaren team. The last Grand Prix in Miami was terrible. Lando Norris, to be honest, did pretty well in the qualifying session there to make it look a bit more respectable for the McLaren team, but they just didn't have any pace, really. Their straight line speed was horrifically bad. They were pretty much bottom of all the speed traps in Miami. And then, obviously Norris, crashed into Gasly. And then Ricciardo finished in, was it 12th place or something like that? I think he got a penalty, didn't he, for overtaking illegally or cutting a corner. Yeah, he had a terrible race, as well did Daniel Ricciardo, and it turned out to be a very poor weekend overall for the McLaren team. And I haven't really seen, I have seen McLaren have actually brought an upgrade, I think, to the brake ducts for their car, but they haven't brought anything that major for this weekend. This track should suit their car better than Miami, because they are definitely hurting on the straights with that car, and obviously with the power unit they've got, which is a Mercedes power unit, isn't helping matters. But I think this weekend they will be stronger as a team. It's just with other teams and what they're doing and the upgrades they're bringing, I don't know where they fit in, really. Lando Norris will most likely be in the top 10 this weekend, but like I said, I don't know where. Because as we'll get into in a moment, Alfa Romeo have a pretty big upgrade, a new floor and a new front wing. Aston Martin have a completely new car. It's pretty much a B car, which we'll show later. And Aston Martin in the race in Miami were just as quick, if not quicker, than McLaren. Obviously, Alfa Romeo, they were amazingly quick in Miami and in Imola, as well with Valtteri Bottas. And Valtteri Bottas will be the only one running the new upgrades this weekend. So it's hard really to say with McLaren where they're going to end up. Like I said, Norris, most likely top 10. Daniel Ricciardo has never really had a great Spanish Grand Prix. He's had a couple decent results, but it's never really been a great track for him, let's be honest. So I think he'll probably be certainly in qualifying outside of the top 10. And then in the race, it depends really on the circumstances of the race, and, tyre wear and stuff like that. And obviously retirements for other cars. But yeah, I'm not sure about McLaren this weekend. I think they'll be stronger than they were in Miami for sure. And I think they'll probably grab a couple points, but I don't know. I just don't have a good feeling about them at the moment. And what I'm seeing upgrade-wise from Alfa Romeo and Aston Martin, yeah, I think they might be a bit off the pace from, I think, where we saw them at Imola, which is, in certain ways, Imola is a similar track. So you would expect, like I said, from what we saw at Imola, you'd expect McLaren to be, putting in a better performance than they did in Miami. But I don't know. It just feels like it's going to be a very tough weekend for them overall. But before, guys, I get into the rest of the teams, of course, the rest of that midfield, in the live chat, make sure to post your comments, giving your thoughts on what I've talked about so far. And also, If you have any questions to ask me about, anything Formula 1 related, then make sure to do so in the live chat before, of course, we move on to the rest of the teams. But just want to remind you guys, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there for more content like this. Remember what I said from the last Grand Prix. I won't be covering the Spanish Grand Prix this weekend because I'm having eye surgery on Sunday. But I will be back for full coverage of the Monaco Grand Prix. And when I mean full coverage, I mean it. Preview every session. I'll be doing a watch along for qualifying preview, race reaction, race review on the Monday. Everything will be covered on the Monaco Grand Prix. So don't forget to subscribe for that. And as well, smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can to help the channel grow. And as well, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5 for more content like this. When it comes to content after this stream, make sure to stick around to the end, and I'll get probably a bit more in depth into what I'm talking, or what I was talking about there. Right, let's read some comments quick. Lando 1 point behind Lewis. Yeah, it's quite amazing, what's happened to Lewis this season. But if that car improves this weekend, I wouldn't be surprised at all if you saw Lewis right up there. Rooksfoot, K-Mag. If someone told you K-Mag in a Haas P10 last year, you would have questioned their sanity. It is so great to see him back. It really, really is. Manshur says Ricardo last of the late breakers, now just last. McLaren F1 races. I'm not particularly a Leclerc fan, but maybe Charles could display a prelude for Monaco. He deserves a home win after last season. I'd agree with that. I think last season he did deserve to win that race. I will say he was at fault for, causing the damage to the Ferrari car. The team weren't completely blameless, but he definitely has to take quite a bit of responsibility for what happened there, because he ended up bending it in the wall at the exit of the swimming pool. But based on his performance that weekend, Charles Leclerc, I think if he had won that race, I don't think anyone would have complained, because he was phenomenal that weekend. And even really the first half of last season, he was putting in some stunning performances. And let's remember, might as well go back to them on the slide here. With Leclerc, last year at the Spanish Grand Prix, he was incredible. Qualified 4th, then got up to 3rd on the start. And remember, if you go back and watch the race, he held on to 3rd for like 25, 30 laps and was actually lapping quicker than Bottas behind, and it wasn't that much slower than Hamilton and Verstappen. Then once the Mercedes and Red Bull got on fresh tyres and they, relentlessly pulled away, and that was really a trait of the Ferrari car, when at certain races where they could kind of compete, they could for a shortish stint, and then they would just fall away because they didn't have a car consistently quick enough. But Leclerc, I thought last year at this race, the Spanish Grand Prix, was, like I said, was incredible. So if he could produce that type of form again, I don't see how he won't be very, very strong. But, of course, didn't really have pressure on him that weekend because he wasn't expected to do that. Josiah says Merc have brought 2 upgrades, last race and this race. Yeah, what was it? Last race they brought, was it rear wing, front wing, and beam wing? And then, of course, this race they brought their big upgrade. Let's see some others here. Music Monster Man says, let's hope Mercedes starts bringing the thunder. I want to see a George victory. Well, given the way he's been this season, if Mercedes do get their car going, I don't see why Russell wouldn't, really take advantage of that. I do think, though, you'll definitely see Lewis Hamilton show some better performance once the car gets in a bit of a better shape. Let's see if I can find some other comments here quick. McLaren F1 races. Merck got lost with the Red Bull versus Mercedes battle last season. I think they went all in last year, but as Red Bull were poaching key people from Mercedes a few years ago, it's paying dividends now. It does seem as though it is. Yeah, they brought on, I think, was it a couple new technical guys? Yeah, it definitely is helping them. McLaren F1 race, I think, says, I think Merck has dialed down the engines for reliability. I don't think that at all. I think that's... I have seen people saying that they've not been maybe using... not been using, you know, full power for reliability reasons. I think that's complete rubbish. They just don't have the straight line speed. Whether it's lack of raw power plus a bit of drag, I don't know, you know, what the rate is on that, but I don't think they're, you know, they're saving compared to other teams, because at the end of the day, they're having, because they're in a position where they're having to really improve and push as hard as possible to try and get back to where they want to be. I don't think they're really in a position to be worrying about reliability. I think at this point, if they were able to get back into a position where they had a quick enough car to fight with Ferrari and Red Bull but had less reliability, I think they would probably take that at this current moment. Butterfly Blue Shorts, interesting name, says, you're great at long form previews. Best of luck on your eye operation. Thank you very, very much for that. And yeah, did I say the reason I wasn't doing content for this weekend? Because of my eye operation? Yeah, that is what it is. I'm having an eye operation on Sunday morning at 7:30, 8 a.m. this Sunday. I had a pre-op check, but also I had a little thing done where they put lasers onto my eyes, so the people doing the surgery know exactly where to put the lens in. What they're doing is they're putting the lens, they're going to make I think, was it called an incision on the, corner of my eye, and then they're going to put the lens in between the front of my eye and the back, so it, you know, is properly in my eye. So yeah, that's what I was doing, or I have been doing, in the gap in between the last Grand Prix and this one, and I did that on Sunday, and yeah, took a bit of time, but got there, and I am definitely nervous for this Sunday, but once it's done, you have no idea how happy I'll be, honestly. Let me see if there's any other comments I can find quickly before moving on to the rest of the stream. And yeah, Paul Bartolo says there was something about Shell doing the testing of the new fuel and possible advantage, but I've not heard more on that. Not certain if impacts, but the Merc certainly needs more horses. Yeah, with the new what do you call it? The new fuel, E10 fuel. Obviously, some manufacturers have got on with it better than others. Mercedes were actually the ones in the winter, in the off season, that were actually saying that it's going to actually, you know, be a bit of a tricky thing. And then, obviously, when the season starts, they well, clearly caught out. McLaren F1 race says, hey Chazza, will you allow comments on Discord again soon? I understand if not, mate, trolls are evil. I don't know what you mean with on Discord. I'm pretty sure I allow comments. And it says, by the way, good luck with the IOP. Not nice, mate. Yeah, I don't know what you mean, unless there's a channel that I'm forgetting that you can't type in, but I'm pretty sure you can type in any of the channels. But yeah, if you want to I guess, clarify a bit more specifically what you mean, then yeah, go ahead and do so. But I think we'll now move on and we'll go on to the Alpine team. And yeah, Alpine had a good result on track, but didn't really end up to be a good result, did it? Because Fernando Alonso ended up not finishing in the points at all. After the Grand Prix, I think he got a further penalty for cutting the chicane, and ended up finishing outside of the points, meaning that the only man to get in the points for the Alpine team in Miami was Esteban Ocon, who did drive well considering he wasn't even 100%. His physical condition was quite severely impacted by his crash in practice 3, I think it was. Yeah, it was practice 3, by hitting the barriers so hard on the entry to the chicane. So yeah, good job physically. He did definitely get very, very lucky with the safety car coming out at the right time, but still, very good drive considering the circumstances. Now, if you look at the characteristics of the track and the strengths and weaknesses of this car, I would say probably going to be a weak race for them, but it is Alonso's home race. We know what Fernando's like. I mean, last year he wasn't great, but to be honest, in the early part of last season, he wasn't great because I think he was really struggling to get back up to grips with Formula 1. Esteban Ocon, though, was amazing at the Spanish Grand Prix in qualifying last year. I think, was it 6th on the grid? I think it was for Ocon in the Alpine. So, if he can replicate that type of form, definitely you'll be looking at him to get in the top 10, probably as well Fernando Alonso. But like I said, I don't see this car being that great around this track. I see teams more like, Alfa Romeo, possibly McLaren, and we'll see with Aston Martin. Like I said, they brought a completely new car to this Grand Prix that is very similar to the Red Bull car, the RB18. So we'll see what happens with that, but I think they'll just be in the fight, hovering around 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and so on. It's very hard really to predict the midfield, as we know in Formula 1, because they're so close. It gets to the point where it's pretty much decided by whether there's any mistakes made on a lap, and also the performance of the driver in terms of the pace they have within themselves around the circuit. So that's really what it's going to come down to with a lot of these positions and a lot of these teams, is driver performance. And the two drivers this season, I think, have done pretty well. So I don't see why they can't have a decent result. Of course, they do need to start catching Alfa Romeo in the Constructors' Championship. They're only 5 points behind. But without the way Alfa Romeo are looking at the moment, that might be a bit difficult for this team. But we'll see what they do in the Grand Prix. Now, next up, we will go to Alfa Romeo. What a season they've had so far. 5th in the championship and only 15 points off 4th. 4th, of course, being McLaren. Who would have thought that at this point of the season? Nobody had Alfa Romeo any higher than 7th at the absolute, most generous in their predictions for the season. Of course, there's plenty of the season left this year, and you never know, Alfa Romeo could drop down the field, especially in the constructors' table and the constructors' standings. But what they've done so far has been just incredible. Valtteri Bottas, obviously, has had an amazing season so far. He scored points at every race except one, and that one race he would have scored points if it wasn't for a technical issue with his car. He's been a fantastic driver this season. One of the best drivers of the season so far. There is no doubt about that. And really, in Miami, had it not been for that mistake he made, where he touched the wall out of the final real corner in Miami, Valtteri, I think, would have finished in 5th place. He was just so good in Miami, and that was despite making a mistake and crashing out in practice 1 and missing all of practice 2. Brilliant performance by Valtteri Bottas, and with the upgrades that Alfa Romeo have brought to this weekend, you never know what they could do. Let me just quickly get it up on screen for you guys if I can. Yep, here we go. And I'll just get it up here. So here you can see is the new front wing. I'll get it up on screen a bit bigger. And you can see here, by the way, Toby Gruner, very, very good journalist, says Alfa Romeo prepared a big upgrade package for Barcelona, including a new front wing and floor, and wind tunnel data promises a big step. One car will have the full kit, the other will miss a few parts. Bottas will have the full kit. So that is the new front wing. And then this is some of the work. It doesn't really show really what the other upgrade is, but it shows that, you know, the work that was going on towards the rear of the car to put the new floor on. So expect Alfa Romeo, who have been very strong so far this season, expect them to be dark horses for a very, very strong result. And ideally, from their point of view, what they need is Mercedes' upgrade not to work and to keep Mercedes basically where they've been this season, and for Alfa Romeo's upgrade with Valtteri Bottas to work. And then, you never know, they could be, clearly with Bottas, the quickest midfield car. How incredible would that be? Of course, we saw it in Miami, them have the quickest midfield car, and really, the safety car coming out, it really did ruin that, because if the safety car didn't come out in Miami, Bottas would have finished in 5th place. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, I'm really excited, honestly, to see what they do this weekend. I really am excited because they've shown some really surprisingly good speed this season, and they continue to get better. What it seems to me with this car is it's just a fundamentally good car. That's what you normally get with cars in a season, where they're just fundamentally good from the outset, and they don't need to be, really worked on massively during a season to really become a good car. Like I said, they just tend to be good straight from the blocks. And what this car will be, hopefully, is a car that just with every upgrade gets better and better, to the point where, they are looking really, really strong towards the end of the season in the championship standings. And remember, Alfa Romeo this season have the second most access to wind tunnel time out of all of the teams. Haas, of course, have the most because they finished last in the championship last season. Alfa Romeo have the second most. So you never know what Alfa Romeo could do. They could end up finishing 4th this season in the Constructors' Championship. But how amazing would that be for Alfa Romeo? I'm not going to get too ahead of myself and say that they're going to finish there, but if this upgrade works, and then obviously Zhou Guanyu, he'll get the upgrade in Monaco, then watch out for Alfa Romeo. They really look very, very good. And I hope, honestly, they continue to show the pace that they've shown in the last couple of races, because they have looked really, really good. And it really is exciting to see a team that has not really done anything in the last few years looking that good. Anyway, let's now move on to the Haas F1 team. And for Haas F1, their season has kind of tapered off, hasn't it, in the last 2 or 3 races. The first race, of course, they scored big with 10 points with Kevin Magnussen. Then had a decent result in Saudi. Melbourne was really seen as a dip, a small dip in form. And then when we came to Imola, obviously they grabbed a couple points there, but it just doesn't feel as though with this car, and obviously we saw this in Miami, they did show some decent speed in Miami, but it wasn't as great as we saw earlier in the season. It just feels as though with this car, they've not really gone anywhere forward since the start of the season. It doesn't feel like the car's improved at all since that first race in Bahrain. And if you are a Haas fan, I'm afraid it won't be improving for, well, the next 2 months, as I'll get into in a moment. But I know it just doesn't feel like this team's really going anywhere after that great start to the season. I mean, you see Alfa Romeo, 5th in the championship, 16 points ahead of the Haas team. Given how Haas started the season, Haas were looking as though they were going to be that team. But now Alfa Romeo have clearly taken over that position. And yeah, Haas are just not looking too great at the moment. Of course, the last Grand Prix, they were heading for points with Mick Schumacher, and then he threw it all away by slamming into his obviously very good friend Sebastian Vettel at turn 1. If he had made the overtake stick, he probably would have scored a couple points, he probably would have scored 4 points because of Alonso's penalty. So Mick would have really helped his team out there, but made such a critical error at such an important time, and it removed any chance of the Haas team. And of course, Magnussen made contact with Lance Stroll towards the end as well. So it was just a disastrous end for the Haas F1 team in Miami. And yeah, with Mick Schumacher this weekend, he has to score. Yeah, does he have to score points? Probably. Yeah, he does. But he has to at least beat Magnussen this weekend. He has to. He cannot afford to let this run of poor results and poor form go on any longer. He's now at a track that, of course, he's raced at before. He should have plenty of experience. Of course, the last Grand Prix in Miami, where him and K-Mag had similar experience around that track, being he outqualified him and was very close to him on pace in the race as well, and was looking as though he was going to outrace him as well until he made contact with Vettel. So this weekend, Mick has got to perform well. If he doesn't, and then in Monaco, follows it up with another disappointing performance, then he is heading for a very bad season if that does happen. But I'm really hoping he can start to turn it around. But let me just quickly bring up this story with Haas F1 that came out a couple hours ago. Let me just find it quickly. Let me just quickly get it up. Here we go. And I'll just quickly display it as well. So, Haas, who have not upgraded their car massively so far this season. They brought a couple of upgrades at Imola. And I can't remember if they brought anything in Miami. I don't think they did. But Haas have decided to wait and introduce one bigger upgrade package, which is currently scheduled for the French Grand Prix in late July. So that means that's going to be 7 races until the next upgrade. 2 months, which in Formula 1, during a season, 2 months without an upgrade is a colossal amount of time. And Günther Steiner, you can see that at the top of the story, says not concerned about rivals making steps with upgrades, and they expect no pain. I'm sorry, this is a fucking stupid decision. Whoever thought of this is an idiot. Like I said, in Formula 1, with the way upgrades work, even in this new era where we have a budget cap and, having lots of upgrades during a season isn't going to be as frequent as it used to be in years past, to go that long without an upgrade is way too long, because Haas are in a position now where they really need to keep upgrading their car. 1, to keep up with the upper midfield, but 2, to try and get back to a position where they can try and fight for a 5th or a 6th in the Constructors' Championship this season. Let's remember, they're currently 8th in the championship, which, honestly, coming into this season and after testing, I think Haas probably were hoping they would have a car that would, be able to put them in the fight for, say, 6th, or maybe even at best 5th in the championship. And because they're in 8th, what they need to do, obviously, is get their way up the order. And because they're not going to bring an upgrade for 2 months, what's going to happen, because the car isn't that quick at the moment, certainly not as quick as it was in Bahrain, which was already, 2 months ago. What's going to happen is, by the time we get to that Grand Prix, Haas are will have lost so much ground to, Aston Martin, who looked quicker than them, really quicker than them, and also in Imola as well, than the Haas team were. Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri, Alpine, all of these teams will just zoom off into the distance. And yes, I know those teams won't be able to bring loads of upgrades. They'll have to bring like a few at once. Say once every, I don't know, 4 or 5 races. But like I said, with the way Formula One works, in 2 months' time, they are not going to be in a position where they're going to be able to really fight. Certainly in the championship with those teams. It's the wrong decision. And I know, like I said, people will say, yeah, but then again, with the budget cap, I understand, but even with the budget cap, they're still going to lose a lot of ground on their midfield rivals. And with Alfa Romeo up in 5th, I'm sorry, Haas F1 do not have an excuse, considering them and Alfa Romeo have pretty much been, well, Alfa Romeo weren't as bad as Haas in 2020 or 2021, or even 2019, but they've been pretty much, at similar levels of the grid. So there isn't really an excuse for this team to not be competing with Alfa Romeo when they've been, like I said, pretty much at the same part of the grid since 2019. So the wrong decision, and it will backfire. I think by the time we get to that Grand Prix, it just won't have turned out to be a good idea. By the time they bring those new, bigger upgrades, it'll basically effectively create a situation where the new Haas car after that race in France will be like a B car compared to what this car is at the moment. And like I said, I think they'll lose too much ground, and I think they'll end up probably at best finishing, 7th or something in the championship. Because of that, just, not the right decision at all from the Haas F1 team. Now, let's move on to AlphaTauri. And I've not really seen anything about AlphaTauri in terms of upgrades this weekend. And I don't really expect anything that big from this team. The last couple races, they've done decently. They've looked decent in terms of pace, but I think the circuit layouts definitely helped them a bit. On certain sessions and all of that, and definitely with Pierre Gasly's performance before Fernando Alonso basically took him out of the Grand Prix. His performance was helped by the AlphaTauri being very well suited to that track layout. This track layout is not going to suit them as well. The AlphaTauri is pretty much similar in its strengths and weaknesses to the Red Bull car. Who would have thought that? Considering Red Bull obviously own AlphaTauri as well. But I think Gasly will be probably, in the top 12, 13 on the grid, but I just don't see a strong weekend for this team. Good news, I guess, that Haas are not upgrading their car for 2 months, but this team's just heading for a mediocre season by the looks of it, doesn't it? Which is disappointing, because they do have 2 good drivers, and 2 drivers that I think have had decent seasons so far, but the car just isn't as good as it was, sadly, last season. Now let's move on to Aston Martin. And Aston Martin have brought an absolutely colossal upgrade to this Grand Prix. They did bring an upgrade, I think, to Imola, did Aston Martin, but considering how bad that car was in Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Australia, it was inevitable they were going to bring a massive upgrade and essentially a completely new car to this Grand Prix. And that is exactly what they have done. Let me just get it back up on my Twitter. And then, of course, I'll show it on screen. And here you go. So let me display it. So here is the B version, as Toby calls it, of the Aston Martin car. And he says it looks like a repainted Red Bull. So that is the kind of far away angle. And then if I, hold on, well, it's not my stream. I think my Twitter's lagging a bit. There's a bit of a closer up angle of the Aston Martin. To be honest, I didn't really analyse the Aston Martin that heavily from testing, so I don't really know the key differences between what it used to look like. But for anyone who, of course, has that type of insight, then you can look here to see the differences. But yeah, a lot of upgrades has gone on to this Aston Martin car. But yeah, Aston Martin, if those upgrades work, then I mean, in Imola, I think the rain did help them to a certain extent. But in Miami, we saw that they looked pretty good. And if it wasn't for them having to start from the pit lane because their fuel was too cold, Aston Martin probably would have finished comfortably in the points of both cars. Their race pace was actually very strong. And I thought both drivers did a very good job with what they had to deal with, the circumstances of the race. Lance Stroll, in the end, because of Alonso dropping out of the points, Lance Stroll did actually score a point from the Miami Grand Prix. It is such a shame that Sebastian got took out by Mick Schumacher, because he would have finished in 8th place had it not been for all that, because he was ahead of Ocon, who of course finished in 8th, and Alonso would have dropped back. And yeah, just so disappointing, because Vettel in the last 2 races has been on top form. He really has, in a car that, let's face it, is not great. But we'll see what their new upgrade does. I am very interested to see what it does. Hopefully puts them where we thought, or hoped rather, they would be coming into this season, which is being one of the best of the rest on the grid, considering, of course, the amount of money that is behind this team and the quality of drivers at Aston Martin. Now, finally, to Williams. And haven't seen anything about upgrades for the Williams team, but considering, like I said, with Haas F1, that Haas are not going to be bringing in any upgrades for the next 2 months, Williams have the chance then to make some gains. Williams also another team that are going to benefit from having more wind tunnel time available to them than, say, the top teams. So they should, Williams, during the season, certainly get better. And even at the moment, with a car that is, let's be honest, it is still pretty poor, Alex Albon is having a phenomenal season in that car. Another points finish in Miami, finished in 9th place, and that Williams car was terrible, really, from qualifying. So phenomenal job by Alex Albon. Hopefully keeps his red hair. That is a bit of a good luck charm for him at the moment. And yeah, hopefully has another good performance in Spain and gets the best out of that Williams car. And if it leads to a points finish, then great. But I think with Williams, if they do really start to make improvements to this car, you're not really going to see it bear fruit really until mid-season. I just don't think at the moment they fully understand what they have. The Williams team, they haven't really unlocked, I think, the car fully, because I think even though Albon has had, good race results, in qualifying they've been pretty poor. So I think definitely they have quite a bit of work to do. But those are all of the teams. Don't worry, guys, there's still plenty of the stream remaining. So we'll be getting into another topic in a moment, discussing the Miami Grand Prix from 2 weeks ago. So yeah, we'll be getting into that soon enough. But yeah, if you guys have any further comments about what I've talked about so far in this stream, or any questions, then make sure to post them in the live chat, and I'll make sure to read them out in just a second. Again, for anyone new watching, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. And also, don't forget to smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can. And as well, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5. But, yeah. Let's come to the chat. McLaren F1 race, talking about the Discord says you do not have permission to send messages in this channel. That's probably the rules channel, and yeah, that's for good reason. It's basically that channel is me, displaying the rules of the server, and I don't want people typing in it. So yeah, but in all the other ones, you should be able to. You should be able to easily comment. Let's find some other comments to read here. G Walker says, howdy y'all. Just got off work and tuning into Chaz's F1 Extraordinary Brain. Thank you very much for that. Don't know what Josiah's on, but he keeps typing D. Brother says, poor Chaz's alpha dreams are running away with him. What other ones do we have here? McLaren F1 race says, Chaz, all good. Sorry, mate, I'm a newbie to Discord. Yeah. What was it? As if you have a server on Discord, you can set certain text channels to have, certain text availabilities, I guess you could say. And yeah, with that one, I just, don't want anyone typing in it because it's purely to display the rules of the server. But yeah, all the others are absolutely fine. And voice channels should be as well. But I think, let me just see if there's any other news that before I get onto this Miami business, I just want to see if there's any other news I can get into before we get into that. Pierre Gasly says there's no short-term fix for AlphaTauri's aerodynamic deficit to rivals. To be honest, that's not really a surprise. Also, what was it? Williams are going to be having Nick De Vries in the car in practice 1 as a Friday driver. Also, Yuri Vips is going to be driving, I think, Sergio Perez's Red Bull in FP1 tomorrow. So look out for that. And even talking about the budget cap earlier, Christian Horner saying budget cap will make continuous development very hard for Red Bull, which is true. And yeah, the only other piece of news is that F1 has scrapped plans to replace the Russian Grand Prix. There were rumours that it was going to be the Turkish Grand Prix because there was, I think someone pointed out that they were selling tickets or trying to sell tickets for a Turkish Grand Prix for later in the year. Maybe that was their plan originally, but maybe because of, I don't know, the proximity to Russia and the whole Russia-Ukraine thing, maybe that was possibly causing a bit of trouble. I'm not sure why they didn't want to race in Turkey, but yeah, they've decided not to replace the Russian Grand Prix, which is fine. 22 races is long enough. To be honest, I don't think the calendar should really be any bigger than 22, 23. I think if we start getting up to 25 or more, that's just way too much. And at the end of the day, in terms of racetracks, there is not, that many great racetracks in the world that deserve Formula One. And of course, there's racetracks on the calendar, plenty of racetracks on the calendar that aren't really that great for F1 racing. Tracks like, you could argue Baku, obviously Sochi definitely has to be one of them. Yas Marina. What other circuits? Jeddah. Obviously this track, the Circuit De Catalunya. Paul Ricard in a way. So, there's not that many great tracks out there, I think, really left to find, unless you want to go back to an older racetrack, like a Nürburgring or a Hockenheim. But yeah, 22 races, that's going to be fine. We're not really going to notice, are we? I mean, obviously, now that means there's a 3-week gap between the Italian Grand Prix and the Singapore Grand Prix from the second weekend in September, that is, from the Italian Grand Prix until I think the first weekend in October. So there'll be a decent gap there of time. But like I said, I don't think we're going to really miss it. I mean, the Russian Grand Prix last year was great, but without the rain, it would have been another shit race because that track is a shit track. It is the absolute worst conceived circuit I've ever seen. 90-degree corners absolutely everywhere. Just hell on earth is what I would describe it. The only corner I would consider at least okay is that long left-hand turn. Is it turn 4? In the first sector. All the rest of the track is just an absolute abomination. And yeah, thank God we're not going to be racing around it any longer. It looks as though we're not going to be racing in Russia, which, make of that what you will. I mean, to be honest, I don't really disagree with the reason. I don't think it's really a good thing to race in Russia, definitely for the next few years, but it's not like we're missing out on a great Grand Prix track because it's anything but. It's that circuit. It's an absolute, like I said, abomination of a track. Let me quickly read out a couple more comments and then I'll get onto this Miami thing. Miss Marquise asks, is Hamilton removing his jewelry? I think he's agreed to remove his ear stuff, his earrings or ear piercings, but I think kept his nose one in. I to be honest, that whole argument is really getting on my nerves, the whole jewelry thing, because it's just really there's bigger things to really be getting all up in arms about, let's be honest. And I'll read this final comment from, and by the way, thank you McLaren F1 Race for tuning in. Blade Rise says in chat, final exam tomorrow, then I shall relax and watch the F1. Also, do you think AlphaTauri have a chance to get top 5 or top 6 in the constructors by the end of the season? With the AlphaTauri thing, no, but best of luck with your exam and hopefully you get the best you can out of the whole experience. But yeah, AlphaTauri, yeah. I think most likely they'll finish 7th in the championship. I just don't see... If you look at this season so far, they just don't have a car that's as good as McLaren, Alfa Romeo, Alpine, and at times Haas as well. Haas have just not really maximised their true potential so far this season. So, yeah, that's why it's ended up with AlphaTauri in 7th position. But I'm now going to hide this and get to this. So, I'm going to get to this Miami Grand Prix part of the stream. I am going to be, by the way, recording this part of the stream because I am going to upload this tomorrow as a clip from this stream as a, a separate video. So, we'll do that now. So, of course, the Miami Grand Prix 2 weeks ago was hyped up to be a massive thing, and for many, it did not quite live up to the hype. Of course, we had plenty of celebrities there, as you can see here. Lando Norris with David Beckham. There was, way more. So many sports stars. And F1, of course, hyped it up to be pretty much the Super Bowl of the Formula One season. And yeah, with the amount of celebrities there, you would have believed it. And if you're Martin Brundle, you would have probably believed it because there were so many that he literally just got confused and didn't even know who he was talking to at some point during his grid walk. But in the end, not just for me, but for many, it didn't quite, the Miami Grand Prix, live up to expectations, and it wasn't quite as good as it a race around a big venue wasn't quite as good as maybe it could have been. So what we're going to get into is the problems from the weekend and look at, how things could be made better for the Miami Grand Prix, and also look at things that Formula One can improve, not just for this Grand Prix, but also with how they do things coming away from this race, not just in terms of, hosting the event, but also the way they present the race itself. So let's get into it. So, of course, the Miami Grand Prix, it was announced that the Grand Prix will be taking place in 2022. It was announced in, was it 2019, I think it was, that we'll be having the Miami Grand Prix. But in 2020, there was some uproar from the local residents of the, local area, where a former, I think it was Miami-Dade, or current at the time, Miami-Dade County Commissioner actually sued, I think, the Grand Prix venue, the Hard Rock Stadium, and Formula One for what they called, and I'll try and get it up now, here it is, for racial discrimination. Now, you can have a quick read of that if you want to and pause the video, but yeah, even if you disagree with the reasoning, clearly there was a general dislike of this Grand Prix taking place in Miami, and also because of, the way things are going with environmental stuff. Also, there was concern about that and the effect it would have on the local community. And you can see there, the issues, I guess they were concerned about, that it would affect that local, especially African American community. But the court case didn't really get that much traction. So then they did actually, on the political side, try to do a recall election and try to kick out some members, I think, of the local council or something like that, that tried to, or that did actually, vote for the Grand Prix, but that didn't really get enough traction or votes either for that to actually happen. But clearly there was a clear, opposition to this race happening. And in my own personal opinion, if you're going to go to new venues, there should not be really opposition to a race happening, because Formula One coming to town should be a great thing for the people of that local area. If they don't want a race, then we shouldn't be having a race there. And of course, Stefano Domenicali, he came out and said, I think before the Miami Grand Prix, but he said this before in terms of the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix, that Formula One promises to leave the places they race in a better place than they found it. At the end of the day, that is not up to him or the sport. That's up to the local governments. There's nothing that he can do about that. But I just don't think racing in places where Formula One has, like I said, a clear opposition in terms of holding a race there, I just don't think that is a good idea. There's plenty of places across the globe that there wouldn't be an opposition to holding an F1 race there that could be cool and unique, and just as cool and unique, I guess you could say, as racing in Miami. But I just feel as though maybe because of that opposition, it wasn't the right thing to do. But now, let's get on to the actual event itself. Now, the biggest takeaway I saw from a lot of people, and the biggest complaint I heard, was ticket prices. It was a big thing that was talked about over the weekend. And I decided to do some, I guess you could say, digging into prices for the Miami Grand Prix, look at some articles, and also do a comparison between the Miami Grand Prix from 2 weeks ago and compare it to this year's race at Silverstone for, of course, the 2022 British Grand Prix. A Grand Prix that, if you live in this country and you're a motorsport or F1 fan, then you know that the demand for tickets and all of that is very, very high, and prices, even for us, Brits, can be a bit steep in, certain circumstances. So we'll get into that now. So for a general admission ticket at Silverstone for all 3 days, it came to £279, which, that's just for one person. So that is still quite a bit. Say if you go with one other person and then, got to spend money on hotels and food and drinks and all that, you're still going to be paying quite a bit of money. Like I said, if you're having a general admission ticket for 2 people with all that stuff, it's still going to be quite an expense. But compared to the Miami general admission, it's not even close. Because if you wanted a general admission ticket for the Miami Grand Prix, it would have been, in pounds, £977. Absolutely disgusting. Disgusting amount of money that is. $1,200 if you want to know the amount it is in the US currency. Just absolute filth, I have to say. And like I said, with Silverstone, for us Brits, the prices can be a bit excessive. But for this Grand Prix, way, 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 way too over the top. And like I said, with Silverstone, even though it's only £279, it is, or still can be, quite expensive if you're going more than one person. With the Miami Grand Prix, even if you go on your own, spending the ticket and obviously buying food and drinks and, staying in a hotel, that is a very expensive weekend or 3 days. And then imagine if you wanted to take someone with you or a family, it becomes just definitely for poorer people, just not a possibility. And it really was a big problem from the Miami Grand Prix weekend. And that wasn't even the worst of it, because I actually went and looked at the, I guess you could say, second-hand ticket prices that were being sold to, Ticketmaster and places like that. Some of the tickets for some of the grandstands for race day were, would make you throw up. I think for Ticketmaster, there was a ticket for one of the main stands that at the high end was going for $15,000 to $18,000. I think it was. There was even some on the high end on certain websites for a certain grandstand going up to $29,000 or even $30,000. Again, disgusting amounts of money and just not right. Absolutely not right. If you want, Formula One to be more accessible to younger people, which, of course, Liberty Media, they are trying to aim for that younger audience because, it's a massive and important audience to try and pull in to Formula One. You're not going to be able to with ticket prices like that, because at the end of the day, most young people are not in a situation where they'll be able to afford paying for that type of ticket. And, obviously the general admission tickets tend to be the cheapest tickets when it comes to visiting a Grand Prix. So, again, just totally wrong approach, and it's completely unfair on people who want to, if they've, watched maybe Drive to Survive on Netflix, it's completely unfair on people that want to actually experience the sport. But at the end of the day, the reason this has happened is because Formula One want to attract the rich and famous. Now, this guy, who is the Miami Grand Prix promoter, defended the ticket prices and said it was due to demand. Again, I'm sorry. Silverstone has a way bigger demand for tickets than this Grand Prix had. Way bigger demand. And he even said that, they could have sold more if they knew the demand, was going to be as big as it was. But again, there are other Grand Prix where I'm sure the demand was bigger for tickets than this Grand Prix. So that's not an excuse. And even if it was as big as other races or the biggest of the season in terms of demand for tickets, that does not justify the tickets costing, £700 more for just a general admission, and you can guarantee for all the other, comparisons for say between Silverstone in terms of ticket prices and the Miami Grand Prix, that when it comes to all the grandstands, you can guarantee at Miami it was way, 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 way more expensive than it would be at Silverstone. And even at Silverstone, again, for British people, it is pretty expensive. And also at other Grand Prix in Europe, it is pretty expensive. So I'm afraid that excuse when it comes to demand just is not going to cut it. But like I said, yet again, for younger fans, it's just not making Formula One accessible, which is, for me, a big problem with... I mean, it's not just certain promoters, but for me, it's also a Formula One problem. Accessibility to Formula One is very, very important. For example, if Formula One, when I started watching it, was not on free-to-air TV when I watched my first race, I probably would have not been in this position where I'm talking about Formula One. And I, at the time, was 13, 14 years old when I first watched my first F1 race. And again, if it wasn't for free-to-air TV, probably would have never got interested because I wouldn't have come across it when I did at that certain time in my life. And for many other people, that would have been the case. I mean, for example, look at someone like Lewis Hamilton, with the way he grew up and the difficulty in finances his family had. If Sky Sports F1, with the prices they charge, or showing Formula One on TV now, that was around back when he was a kid. Would Lewis Hamilton have ever got interested in Formula One? Probably not, because again, the accessibility would not have been there. We have to make Formula One more accessible to younger people, and pricing them out of watching Formula One is a failed strategy. It's purely just to obviously bring in the money. That's why they are, progressively putting Formula One more so behind a paywall and charging, more and more for tickets, because it is the money they are after. But it's hurting, again, the accessibility of new and younger fans into Formula One. And yeah, with the way they've improved the social media side, obviously that has improved bringing young people into Formula One. But if you want to watch actual Formula One races live and not just the highlights on YouTube after, it's going to be pretty hard on a consistent basis, again, for younger people that they are trying to aim for, to try and do so with the prices that we are seeing. But that is definitely the biggest problem that I saw from the event itself, and that has to stop next year. You cannot be charging that much for tickets. It just is not right. And certainly the young people, let's say, that wanted to go to the Miami Grand Prix but couldn't because the ticket prices were so high, I'm sure they wouldn't have wanted to pay that much money for this. A fake arena created purely to try and compete with Monaco and I guess Yas Marina, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and having that type of setting, and trying maybe to become the new Monaco Grand Prix so they can get rid of the Monaco Grand Prix. This is just stupid and silly. We don't need it in Formula One. Just fucking stop. It is not what we need to be doing with this sport. Now moving on to the Grand Prix itself, and more so the track. So the race on the Sunday, it started off well enough. We had some good racing. Obviously Verstappen coming through, getting into the lead, some decent battling in the midfield. But then definitely in the mid part of the Grand Prix, it really did cool down quite a bit. And what we got was, before that safety car, just a meh kind of Grand Prix. And lots of people just were bored by it, really, in that mid part of the Grand Prix. Then the safety car came out, then of course there was more excitement, but even after the safety car came in, it wasn't like we had an explosion of action. It wasn't that great. And I think the reason is not just the track layout, which I'll get into in a second, but it's also because the way the track is designed did not allow, really, for, great racing. So the first sector of the track, in terms of just judging it on the sector alone, rather than, concentrating on, is it good for racing? I like it. It's absolutely fine. It is reminiscent absolutely of the first sector at the Circuit of Americas, obviously the United States Grand Prix in Austin, Texas. I like that layout as well. And like I said, it's absolutely fine, but it is pretty hard to follow through those corners. But that part of the track, if we're judging it purely on the track rather than is it good enough for racing, because of course if you want a track good enough for racing, you may as well just make a track like Monza with heavy braking zones as well. This first sector, like I said, it's absolutely fine, and for me is the best part of the track. The problem with the circuit in terms of its flow and just general layout is what happens when you start the second sector. So the second sector, you have one long straight, and then you come down to this, 90-degree left-hander, and you can definitely overtake into this corner. Offline, yes, it was very, very dirty offline, and that's one thing they do have to improve a lot going into next year's Grand Prix, is the track surface, which clearly was not good enough. They need to relay the surface because it was just not in any condition really for Formula One cars, certainly if you wanted overtakes to happen. But yeah, the first half of the second sector, simple enough, but then the second half of the second sector was a very unique series of tight, twisty corners and quite slow bends. Of course, this chicane we had, I think was it the turn 14 and 15 chicane, Lewis Hamilton would describe it as a B&Q car park. And in terms of its clumsiness, he was correct with that. And look, I understand it's unique. It's not this type of, corners in terms of the corners that come before the chicane and right after. It's not something we've usually seen at other, tracks that we have Formula One races at. But it just does not, for me, it just doesn't work. It ruins the flow of the track. Because, of course, the first sector, it has a very nice flow. Left, right, fast corners. Then you go onto a very fast straight into an overtaking braking zone. And then you have a couple, medium speed corners, and then some real clumsy corners towards the end of the second sector. And for me, it just ruins the flow of the track. Really, what they need to do is get rid of the chicane so they can just straight line it to turn 16. That would be much better. And I think it would allow the cars to probably follow a bit better. Of course, this year the cars can follow better, but even with the much improved, the cars being able to follow each other being much improved, even in this sector, it looked pretty hard to really get close to the car ahead. So like I said, that chicane, got to get rid of it. It's just, it's too clumsy, and you can't really keep that close to the car ahead through a series of corners like that. And then the third sector, the reason I don't like the third sector is because it's just way too simplistic. You come out of turn 16 onto a straight that is a dead straight, no curves, no nothing, no kinks or anything like that, into a slow braking zone, left-hander, which is very dirty offline, but then you come into two final corners that are flat out and onto the pit straight. Again, it's too simplistic. There's nothing really to the final sector. It's just basically two straights with a slow corner in between it. That isn't really that imaginative. So overall, for me, the track from the first sector has its potential, but then really from the second half of the middle sector, all the flow that you have from the first half of the lap gets ruined, and then it just becomes awfully simplistic. And at the end of the day, I don't think the racing we got really was that great. And a lot of the actual racing we did get was really due to the poor track grip, certainly offline, that we saw as well out of the final real corner at the track. But the final thing to get into before we come to the end here is the TV direction of the Formula One broadcasts. Now, I'll move to this picture instead. More representative, of course. We saw this during the race on the Sunday, and we've seen this plenty of times, by the way, since Liberty Media have come into Formula One. I remember one time during the 2019 British Grand Prix when me and Nib did a race watch along, and it happened in a really bad way there. You're seeing on-track action, they're showing it on the TV broadcast, and then suddenly, right when you want to look at the action, they show the crowd. Please fucking stop. I do not want to see the crowd when something is happening. It's like, you know, a tennis point going on in an important match, and then in the middle of the point, just show some dickhead in the crowd. I don't care. I want to see what is actually going on. I don't care about the crowd at that moment. If there's nothing going on track, fine. Show the crowd if there is nothing going on. But if there is something going on, then actually show it. I don't care about you filming the crowd who are filming the actual thing itself. That's all they're doing. They're not doing anything interesting. They're just all filming what's going on, what you should be filming actually on track. It is so annoying. No other, you know, series or sport that I have seen does this. It is so incredibly frustrating. Imagine, for example, it's an important World Cup match in football. Of course, the World Cup is later this year. Imagine it's the World Cup final or some big World Cup match. One team towards the end of the match is making an attack. It looks as though they're about to score, and then they cut to, you know, this guy. Obviously, they wouldn't, because this guy wouldn't be at a World Cup match. But you get what I mean. We don't care. Just show the actual action on the screen. In no other sport, football, tennis, anything that I can remember, do they show the crowd in the middle of an important play, point, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Please stop doing it. I don't care what the crowd is doing during the event, really. Again, if you're going to show them, if you have to show them, do it when there is literally nothing going on, please, because it is so infuriating. It really, really is. And not just for me, but for everyone. And many people I saw on Twitter were complaining about that. And it is incredibly frustrating for anyone, especially older F1 fans. I guess you could say like myself. I've been watching F1 now for over 10 years. Not that long compared to other people out there, but you know, back then, this wasn't an issue, but annoyingly, it is an issue now. But yeah, those were the issues from the Miami Grand Prix. Poor, at times, TV direction, disgusting ticket prices, not a great track layout, and poor grip. And also the residents itself, the actual people who live in the area, not just the rich people who decided to visit that Grand Prix, probably were opposed to the Grand Prix happening. So not the greatest event in the world. Hopefully Formula One can make improvements on those issues from the weekend. Again, ticket prices, they've got to come down. In the future, try and race in new places that they actually want Formula One in their area, rather than they're having active opposition. Make sure the track surface you race at in that new Grand Prix, whatever it may be, is actually suitable and good enough to race on. And make sure the track layout is, you know, conducive and good enough for racing. That is what we need in Formula One. But guys, let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of the Miami Grand Prix. And let me know what you thought of the problems with the Miami Grand Prix and what you would have liked to have seen from the Miami Grand Prix that would have made it a better experience overall. Let me know in the comments section down below. But guys, until my next video, it's been me, ChazzaHD. Goodbye. And there you go, guys. That is my recording of that part of the stream done. And we'll now move back to this. And also, for the final bit of the stream here, yeah, let me know, guys, what did you think of the Miami Grand Prix and the problems with it? And I'll quickly go through that now. Let me just find the start of these comments about what I was talking about. How much will Vegas be next year? Probably like double. Yeah, 2,000 general admission. F1 have lost the plot. Gotta go. Thanks for the stream. No problem. Let's find some other things here. Good to see, by the way, Tonka in chat. Just trying to see if I can find any comments. Can you put videos? Asked Marcelo Morales. I mean, if I was to watch a video on the screen, by displaying my screen, I could probably show video. But to be honest, showing video in terms of copyright issues is not something I really want to be, risking. Which is why a lot of the time I show, of course, pictures. Faith Thomas at me and says, you think that's something they show the race at 5 a.m. in America early in the morning when half of America is asleep? They save the good stuff for the National Basketball Association. To be honest, I'm not quite sure what you mean with the whole timing there, but I mean, yeah, the timings of I'm trying to think. Yeah, the timings of the races in America aren't great, but they're not too bad. They could be a lot worse. Can't see anything else by the looks of it. Actually, there was one more thing. Yeah, McLaren F1 race saying, Chazza, the crowd filming will be worse as usual. Yeah, they'll continue to do it, guarantee. They're not guaranteeing, but they are determined, I guess you could say, to just go down the path that they are going down with the way they're doing Formula One, which I think eventually it will lead to Formula One getting worse. It becoming too gimmicky, too silly, too focused on other things other than the actual on-track action. And I guess you could say more corrupt. That is Formula One, unfortunately, at the moment. Let's focus on the things that are better, though, which is the on-track stuff between the drivers and teams, which definitely, like I said, is the better side of Formula One. But I think I'll come to the end of the stream there, guys. It's been, 2 hours since I started the stream, so yeah, my throat is basically finished at this point, which I think you guys could probably hear by listening to the stream here. But I just wanted to reiterate, final, I guess, channel update, because this is the last time you guys are going to hear me until Tuesday, the 24th of May, which is 2 days after the Grand Prix this weekend. Again, I won't be doing any content this weekend. The reason is because I'm having a surgery on Sunday morning on my eyes to put actual lenses in my eyes so I'll be able to see properly and won't have to wear glasses ever again. Massive thing for me. It's been like 2 years in the making, pretty much. Not even 2 years. It's been basically my whole life in the making. It's something I've always wanted to get rid of, my glasses. If you talk to anyone who has to wear glasses, if you ask them, do you want to stop wearing glasses? I think pretty much everyone would say yes, because it does help you confidence-wise so much more if you don't need to wear something like glasses. But yeah, that's why I won't be doing content this weekend. That little Miami thing I just did, that will be uploaded tomorrow at 12 p.m. UK time, like I said. as a separate video. The reason I'm doing it as a separate video is for people that, you know, don't watch all of the streams, because of course not everyone watches the entire stream in its full length. That's why I'm uploading that separately. And yeah, and as well, just to clear up any confusion, the reason I'm not doing any content for tomorrow or Saturday when I could is because I need to get my sleeping pattern in order, because I've got to be leaving in the middle of the night basically to get to the place, which is about 3 hours away for surgery. So I haven't really got the ability to, you know, to do content as I would normally be able to, because like I said, I've got to get my sleep schedule in a certain way to be able to be not too tired for the surgery itself. So like I said, there'll be a video tomorrow, that Miami Grand Prix thing, and then there'll be no content on Saturday and Sunday or Monday. But then on Tuesday, all things going well with my surgery, which it should be, considering how they've treated me so far. On Tuesday, I'll be doing a stream at 8 PM my time, of course, UK time, reviewing the Spanish Grand Prix and getting into the talking points and, you know, what I thought of the Grand Prix. I should be able to watch the Grand Prix later that day after my surgery. If I can't, though, then I'll try and watch it on Monday, the day after. But yeah, the next stream, like I said, Tuesday 8 PM my time, reviewing the Spanish Grand Prix. And then 2 days after, on Thursday the 26th of May, in 7 days from now, I'll be doing a preview for the Monaco Grand Prix. By the way, remember, in previous history, Monaco has done practice 1 and practice 2 on a Thursday, and then the Friday has been a day off. That won't be happening this year. Practice 1 and practice 2 for this year's Monaco Grand Prix will be taking place on Friday. So the Monaco Grand Prix schedule is, for me, to do a preview on the Thursday, practice 1 and practice 2 watch along, and a qualifying preview on the Friday. And then a practice 3 and qualifying watch along on the Saturday. And then a race preview, race watch along, and race reaction on the Sunday. And then a race review on the Monday. So I'm going to pretty much make up to you guys the content that I won't be putting out this weekend. I'll make up to you guys with next weekend's content, where I'll be doing, like I said, a full-on schedule. So don't worry, there'll be plenty of content coming your way, as I just mentioned, and hopefully I'll see you guys for that. Of course, I'll keep you guys updated as to how, you know, my surgery has gone, whether I'll be able to do that stream on the Tuesday. I'd imagine so, unless I felt like really tired or just not sore but achy, I guess, from the whole experience. We'll have to see what happens, but I should be okay enough to do that stream, and I am determined, definitely, to do that stream, to get back to streaming next weekend. But yeah, thank you guys for coming along to watching this stream. And yeah, if you are new to the channel, then don't forget that content for next weekend's Monaco Grand Prix will be heading your way. So don't forget to subscribe for that. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. Or go to my homepage and do it there. Whilst you're there, hit the notifications bell. And as well, smash the like button and share this video and channel every way you can. Of course, does help the channel grow. And as well, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5. And don't forget as well to join my Discord server, link below in the description. That is the best place for my for notifications of my videos and streams. And again, another great place to keep up to date with what I am doing. But yeah, the next time I'll see you guys is in what, 5 days from now. So I will see you guys on Tuesday, the 24th of May, and again 8 PM that evening for a review of the Spanish Grand Prix. Hopefully my surgery goes well. Thanks for the well wishes. And like I said, I will see you then. And until that time, guys, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.